let's be honest, all of the good stuff we talked about before we hit record.
Yeah, as usual.
Without further ado, welcome to Making Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
I got Fantha.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file.
That doesn't sound too hard.
Boom! This is Making Tracks.
This is the way.
Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
I know these people. They are brutal. Does this look Jedi to you?
That's not how the Force works.
They'll never see it coming.
Count me
How are you, Mr. Newbold?
I'm very well. I'm very much looking forward to talking about, believe it or not, Star Wars. It's been quite the week, hasn't it?
Been a busy news-filled week with lots of promise.
Plenty of promise, loads of promise. Before we get started, I've got to tell you a little story.
Okay.
You can see, because we're on camera, I've had my hair cut. Went to my sister's house and, unusually for me, because it's usually glued to my person, forgot my phone, which proper threw me because I never forget my phone. Of course, on the day that they announced that Simon Kinberg will write and produce a new Star Wars trilogy, and then I had to get up really early for work, like 3:20 alarm. So I had no chance to post anything for like most of the day. So that proper threw me because you know me and my posting habits.
Yes, got a lot of messages from people who are like, well, we've heard the news, but what's happened to Newbold? Is he asleep on the job? Because he hasn't posted anything.
I know.
But this is it, man. Like we say at the end of each episode, we do this for free. We don't get paid for it. This is bizarrely a hobby. You're completely allowed to not post something for a couple of days. I mean, I'm sure it's happened to us loads, and I know it happens to other podcasters all the time. You talk about something like it's never going to happen, and then the next day Lucasfilm come out and announce it. It's like just sod's law. Anyhow, what's in the news this week, my friend?
Simon Kinberg worked on The Force Awakens as a consultant, was one of the team behind the launch of Star Wars Rebels back in 2014, along with Dave Filoni and co. And now he's coming back to work on a new Star Wars trilogy. When it was first announced, the initial reports were saying that it was 10, 11, and 12, and apparently it's not. Kinberg posted on his Instagram account, and such luminaries as Tracy Canobio were liking the post, which gives you a hint that if one of the team on the PR department of Lucasfilm is liking the post, there's validity to it. It's not been officially announced by Lucasfilm, but it feels like things are starting to move on that point. And if Simon Kinberg, producer of his standing, is prepared to share that article from Deadline, I believe it was, you've got to think there's something to it. So a new trilogy, not 10, 11, and 12. Daisy's been talking this week, as we know, saying imminent news. She's been saying imminent news for a while. Makes me think I need to buy her a dictionary for Christmas because she might not know what imminent means. New trilogy from a producer that has a proven track record starting at the earliest point of the Disney Star Wars era. What do you make of this? You got a good vibe about this?
Well, the fact that I had to have a deep inhalation of air before I started talking probably suggests maybe not. But actually, kinda is in the trades. So therefore, normally there's some kind of decent validity to it. However, like there was a follow-up article by Variety who said that it's kind of a little bit too early in the process to have been announced. Like a lot of people who were working in the industry were thrown by this because they may have heard that something like this was happening, but actually they weren't expecting anything to be made public anytime soon. Simon, as you say, is a very good producer. If he's only producing, coming up with a story and stuff, that's cool. Like from a franchise perspective, he was the one who directed like the lowest grossing X-Men film. He's had slightly more inconsistent directorial success from a production and a producer kind of perspective. So let's be fair, it's in development. That could mean anything. You could almost argue and say that Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy is also in development still. As much as I'm kind of like, oh, that's exciting, there's the other part that is like big pinch of salt at this moment in time until we find out more information. Because you look at what we have got coming, and it's like, you know, we're starting to get a little bit more firmer idea of some of these productions and their release dates and actually whether or not we're going to happen. But there's more things potentially in development than not at the moment, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I don't think anyway, because I feel like in some respects it's probably Kathleen Kennedy and the Lucasfilm executives maybe hedging their bets a little bit. Let's run with all these different ideas and see which one coalesces and actually develops into something that we can really green light.
Don't you think it's a worry that we've had this with fans before saying, can you please not announce stuff until you definitely know it's happening? bouncing around the news as well. Obviously, we've got the Andor news of season 2, and that was out there in the afternoon from a fan who spotted it on Disney Plus. There's a poster that had the 22nd of April date on there, and of course they ran with it. And then later that day, there's the D23 Brazil news, and it's confirmed. So something is leaked, and these things happen, and it's not the worst news. It's good news. We're getting Andor. We know when we're getting it. It's not long after Celebration. So there's that, and it's Lucasfilm and ILM coming out and saying, yep, it's happening, great. But then you get this, and we have been here before, and you just gave probably the best example. It's pretty much 7 years since Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy was mentioned the first time, give or take. So there you are with a trilogy that has still not happened, whether it's due to Lucasfilm, whether it's due to Johnson, whether it's due to a convergence of different things, we don't know. But there's lots of possible Star Wars out there. And only last week, we were talking about Mangold's film stuff, filming in Daisy's film, moving forward, and Mando and Grogu's finished filming, and that's out in, May of 26. So there's already a lot happening. And I just wonder, is this a reactionary thing because we've just had Acolyte come out, and as much as a lot of people enjoyed it, including myself, Lucasfilm made the decision, and Disney, not just Lucasfilm, made the decision not to pick it up and carry on with it. That is what it is. It's the limited series that everybody thought Kenobi was, but we'll hopefully probably get more Kenobi in the future. Are they reacting to that? Are they doing what you just said, casting their net wide? Do they want to do that again? It was not that long since Kathleen Kennedy stood on stage and had about 12 different projects behind her.
Exactly.
Rangers of the New Republic never happened, and Droid Tales never happened, and Lando, who knows where we are with Lando? That feels like a very easy win, and that's still bobbling along.
Simon Kinberg, he executive produced Deadpool & Wolverine, which is basically the first film in what feels like forever, big Marvel film that's really kind of grossed over $1 billion. And again, we have seen this very much from Lucasfilm before, where they jump on somebody's hot, but did it with Rian Johnson. And this is somebody who's actually got a proven track record. So that makes me feel a lot more confident in the fact to actually probably be able to deliver something, assuming it gets it all the way through the development process. I mean, this is me saying that this clearly can't have just been somebody spotted him and Kathleen Kennedy having like an In-N-Out burger and, writing some kind of like agreement on a napkin. This has probably been percolating for a while for it to kind of get out. The amount of bodies who probably walk in and out of Lucasfilm and Skywalker Ranch and all that, and actually have conversations about potential projects that aren't happening or might even be like a non-Star Wars production. Lucasfilm do make other franchises and other content. We think that because Variety and Deadline have both posted it and followed it up, you think that there's going to be some validity. So it might be closer to getting greenlit, or at least kind of getting to the script and development stage. I mean, I don't think there's been anybody else assigned to this project. And you think that we still got Taika Waititi kicking around. There's still the Lando film kicking around.
Sean Levy's got a project going.
Sean Levy's got a project. James Mangold. And there's lots of people in the mix at the moment, which makes it kind of an interesting and exciting time. But at the same time, like you said, I'm going to have to temper things with a little bit of realism. If in 6 months' time or 18 months' time, we find that Simon Kinberg has departed the Star Wars project, that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to be kind of like knives out and pitchforks out for Kathleen Kennedy.
Like Stephen Knight just leaving the Rey film, for example.
Exactly, because we don't know under what circumstance. We don't necessarily know that it was because of creative differences. It might have just been that point where he's got the script to a certain point and he's now needs somebody else to pick it up and do the polish and the fine tune and get it ready for actually shooting.
Have we heard a huge amount from JJ since he signed the Apple deal? I don't remember hearing much from JJ at all, apart from the John Williams documentary. He doesn't seem to have done a huge amount, unless it's totally gone on by my radar. But JJ is a high-profile guy, so I just wonder at some point, are they going to go back to JJ and say, do you want to hop back on board? Because, it was a pretty successful relationship, 2 films bringing in, $2.5 billion between them. I just wonder where the mindset is.
So JJ's upcoming credits, this kind of makes sense. Look at Spielberg's credits and stuff like that as well. They are all producer or executive producers. And we know that JJ produces and executive produces more than he directs. And I can understand that, because let's be fair, you do a 16, 20-week shoot, that's a long time. You've got all the pre-production and then the post-production and then the pre-release and then the post-release press. So doing a film is a big commitment. So therefore, you can understand that. And a lot of directors don't necessarily want to go from film to film to film. They like this idea of you live with it, you sit with it, you digest it, and then at that time you start having loads of different ideas that percolate, and then you can, as you go through, it's like, do you ask yourself, do I really want to be directing this, or can I actually maybe get the credits as an executive producer, the guy who's actually coming up with the ideas, and then get somebody else to do all the heavy lifting, the late night calls and the early morning calls for actually the production. So it's whether or not he kind of feels that now that he's done a Star Wars, he needs to do another one.
Now we're in a different time. We're in a different world.
Yeah.
Technology's moved forward. And Dave Filoni would presumably want to focus on filming his stuff in the States, let's say, rather than decamping to the
like
UK.
That. Yeah.
It does, doesn't it? The TV stuff is in that part of the world. And you wonder whether or not this new Kinberg trilogy, let's go back to that, are they going to try and do it the Mando and Grogu way by mostly filming it in the volume on stagecraft, which I don't or haven't seen any leaks. I've barely seen anything. D23 Brazil was this weekend. They showed some of those clips again, I understand. So there's things that they can control there completely. Would Lucasfilm nowadays want to focus on doing something in a volume, or would they rather go down the more Andor route of building ferrex and shooting it that way, which you'd think would take them to the UK. I mean, they've got all these deals with Pinewood. What's your gut feel? I mean, it's way too early to really have an opinion, but, if you're thinking it through, what would you think their preference would be?
You kind of understand it a little bit with Mando, because the 3 series that we have had are filmed in the volume. And so therefore you could say it kind of creates a certain kind of aesthetic, in terms of like the kind of shots that they do and the limitations that the volume allows. So then if you were to go, right, here's 250, 300 million, let's go and now make an Andor kind of set, the film would look chalk and cheese over the series. Oh. And if this is kind of meant to be like an extension of the series, then you kind of go, well, it kind of makes sense. And because I don't see there's any reason why they can't, why they wouldn't want to. Maybe the budget's also been curtailed a little bit. If they've had a little bit of a budget slash in just to keep it respectable after stuff like Indiana Jones and all that, I'm more than happy to be challenged and pleasantly surprised when we see Mandalorian and Grogu when it comes out and we find out that the volume did some stuff, but actually most of it was big sets. I'll be like, fine, great, happy days.
Hi, this is Jack Parker, Pip from The Acolyte, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
So we're returning to Farnborough for Fan X Live. I had the good chance to speak to a load of Star Wars guests. Included amongst them was Nick Kellington. You'll know Nick from Rogue One. He was Bistan. He was Snoke Uncorfe in The Last Jedi. He was a puppeteer on Solo. He was Claude in The Rise of Skywalker. And right now he's Bob in Beetlejuice. Big hit movie. And as we were speaking, it was the #1 film in the world. So here's me and Nick talking all about Beetlejuice, loads of Star Wars stuff and much more. Right, we're here at FanX in Farnborough. It's Sunday afternoon and it's late in the afternoon and I'm here with Nick. How are you?
I'm very good, Mark. How are you?
I'm very good. It's been a good weekend. How's it been for you?
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been lovely. Been lovely meeting new people and lovely catching up with old crew.
Yeah, it is, exactly. So I think the last time we saw you was at Star Wars Fan Fun Day in Blackburn.
Yes, a few years ago, yes.
Yeah, it's a good night, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, excellent.
I'm glad you remember it because it's a bit hazy for me. It's a really good night.
There was a lot of bottles on that table.
No, a lot of bottles of red went down. I do remember that. How's life been with you since then? It was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, no, it's been pretty cool. I think I've had a new Apple series come out since then,
right.
Called Lovely Little Farm.
Nice.
And I'm a little girl pony, of course. So yeah, we've got that. Then The Acolyte came out,
yep.
And I was the big beast of burden at the start of episode 2,
yep.
Pulling a cart in that. And then we've had Beetlejuice out this summer, which has been
great guns.
Amazing, absolutely amazing.
You must be thrilled to bits for that.
Over the moon. It's been so well received, and so has Bob Shrinker, my character.
Yes,
yeah.
Bob's a legend. I mean, Bob's a legend anyway, but I mean, in this one, he really gets his flowers. You see plenty of him.
Yeah, no, but I couldn't believe it when I got the role. Kind of, and then I've got the script, and then on set, kind of how heavily involved we were, getting to work with Tim, getting to work with Michael. It was just a dream to work on.
And when you get into that, you go into it, you get the role, you know you're doing it, and you do your preparations as you do. But then, as you just say, you're working directly with Michael Keaton, legend. You're working with Tim Burton, again, incredible people who know what they want to bring out of this sequel, which is so in step with the first one.
Yes.
That must have been fascinating for you as a performer.
Yeah, no, it was, and quite often, because I'm inside my creature costume, and sometimes it seemed like Tim and Michael would forget that I was inside, and so I'd just be stood with the two of them, and they're talking about the scene and having a laugh, and talking about what they're going to do, and I just feel privy to this beautiful world of very happy, confident people doing things that they love. And kind of going, I can't believe I'm in the middle of all this.
And those two guys, of all people, collaborating again. They did those 2 Batman films, and now they're doing a second Beetlejuice film together. So there's at least 4, and they may have done more. But to be in the mix of that, fantastic.
And it was amazing watching Michael Keaton work up close, because he is such a legend and such a talent. And I remember, we only ever did about 4 or 5 takes. Yeah. And the first take, it always seemed to be that Michael did the script, and then each take after that he'd go off script and improvise. Really? And I think I can say each take got slightly ruder and slightly more Beetlejuicy. And at the end of every take he'd look over to Tim and with a big grin on his face going, "Did you like that, Tim?" And Tim was just laughing his head off. I mean, it was a joy to witness.
Yeah, that's it. For your fellow performers who worked on it, everybody said that it's like highlight, career highlight.
Yeah, but also for our team with Neil Scanlon, pretty much everything that we saw being developed in our workshop, we saw on camera and heavily featured. Yeah. And it was such an uplifting, fun project for the whole team. Yeah. And it was hard work, it was graft, but it was so rewarding.
But when you get something out of it, great memories, and in the real world things to talk about at events like this, it's another thing that's going to bring people to your table, but that must be hugely rewarding for you.
Yeah, no, it's one of the most fun projects that I've worked on, I can honestly say. And it was such a buzz because I'd not seen any of the film until we got to go to the cast and crew. Right. And then to see kind of that Bob gets the last shot of the film.
He does.
And I didn't know that I was going to get such a good credit in the credits as well. It was like I was just on cloud 9 for days after seeing that. So
in the Star Wars galaxy, just let our listeners know some of the characters that you performed throughout the movies that you've done so far.
Oh, blimey. Oh, well, my first one was obviously Bistance, Space Monkey in Rogue One. Then I had Snook Ukafei in The Last Jedi. I worked on Solo, but unfortunately my character got cut. Then on Rise of Skywalker, I had Claude, Amonsi Tidian. Yeah. And then I had 2 other characters that weren't as heavily featured. And I worked on the Vexus Snake. I was in Pisana. I did a little space worm in Pisana. I can't think what else now. I'm sure there's other things, but they're the main ones that I remember.
But they're all, I'm assuming there's similar disciplines with the things you do, and then there must be some different disciplines in the things you do. Do you like the variation?
Oh, the variation is everything. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That's why it keeps you coming back and keeps you interested. Yeah. And you never know, going into a job, what it's going to be. Yeah. Oh, can I just say one thing, though, going back to Beetlejuice? I was in the bodysuit, but the puppeteer who puppeteered Bob's face was Neil Sterenberg. And the last time I worked with Neil Sterenberg was on The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. Right. And he was the lead puppeteer for Rian. The lead Gelfling. And he was also the scroll keeper, Skeksis. And I've worked with Neil on and off for years and years, going back to CBeebies time. But it was such a joy working with Neil on Beetlejuice and him being the puppeteer, the main puppeteer for Bob. And then I must say that in our death scene, it was myself and Neil, and then the mighty Mike Quinn came and helped us out on the mouth for the death scene as well. So again, it's what I love about this business is bumping into familiar faces that you know and love and get on with, but then you get to go on a new adventure together.
And it totally strikes me that you've played all these really upbeat, positive characters in kids' television, and then you get a great death scene with Bob.
Yeah, no, it was. I was so. It's weird to say. I was so happy when they killed him. Yeah. Because it felt like his character had a proper arc. And also because we came back to film that as additional photography. Okay. So we filmed most of our block in the summer, and then in the autumn, and I didn't know what happened to him in the end. Right. And so after the summer, after the strike had finished over in America, and we could resume things again, we filmed his death scene, and it was so rewarding to kind of go, that's what happens to him.
That's brilliant. It's been fascinating talking. I'm really glad we had the chance.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Mark.
Brilliant. Thank you.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
As we mentioned earlier, it's been a very, very busy news week, and coming hot on the heels of the Kinberg announcement was that the second season of Star Wars Andor is coming to Disney Plus on the 22nd of April. That's a Tuesday in the States, Wednesday the 23rd here in the UK and around the rest of the world. Great news, but also we've got an extra tagline added to it. It's not just Andor Season 2, it's now Andor, a Star Wars story, which I personally freaking love. 12 episodes in a quartet of triple episodes, taking you through the years leading right up to Rogue One. So we'll be leaving Cassian right at the start of the 2016 Star Wars story. What do you make of this, Mark? It's been confirmed by Lucasfilm. It was announced at D23 Brazil over the weekend. We are getting season 2 of Andor just a couple of days after the end of Star Wars Celebration as well.
Well, that's fantastic for everyone who will probably still be out in Japan. It's good to have that date announced. It's not too far away now when you think about it. We're near a couple of weeks away from Skeleton Crew, so we're only 10, 12, 16, 20 odd weeks away from Andor. Yeah, I'm sure there's probably a few squeaky bums in Lucasfilm post-production trying to get that one out, but it's very cool. And I like the idea of adding that a Star Wars story to the tag. It kind of really does tie it into Rogue One and maybe also Solo. We might get an Alden Ehrenreich cameo. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? Got 12 episodes. Let's not do another Kenobi or even Acolyte and blast through them as quickly as we possibly can by doing like double and triple screenings and stuff. I mean, I kind of get it. Maybe if you need to do the first two just to kind of get it up and running. But after that, let's just have it, week in, week out, because then we can talk about it and it becomes a thing. And lots more people get more traction because it's on and more people are talking about it. And it's only going to be good, surely, for the actual end product.
Completely. 160 days till it launches in the States as we speak, 161 till we get it in the UK with the time difference. But I did say in the article on Fantha that I imagine we'll probably get the first 3 episodes on the opening day because it's a 12-episode season.
Yeah.
And that's the first block. But when we look back at season 1 of Andor, and I finished a rewatch only last week, it's phenomenally good. It's phenomenally good, but no doubt about it, those first 3 episodes are a lot slower. They do just ease you into the world.
Let's be fair. I think there's a lot of slightly nervous kind of people, like especially at the end of the first episode and definitely by the end of the second episode as to like, what the hell is going on? Because this is kind of like, this is Star Wars, but nothing's really happening. The
first 3 episodes were about as pacey as watching Cyril eat his cornflakes at his mum's house, wasn't it? When you look back at it, and certainly on second and third, I think it's my third run through season 1 of Andor, which I've probably watched more than any of the other series. Now you appreciate the ramping up of the tension and just the whole scenario. And I mean, the whole galaxy's going through this as well, isn't it? We're a few years short of, or ahead of, where we are in A New Hope, and Rogue One obviously is bumper to bumper with A New Hope, but it works so much better if you've got the patience. Season 2 feels like, just logically, Cassian's going to be more involved with the rebellion now. Mads Mikkelsen is going to Japan, and now we know Andor launches 2 days after the end of Celebration. You kind of feel like he's going to be involved. So you're going to see some Death Star stuff. I interviewed Guy Henry 2 years ago and sort of went, any chance on Andor Season 2? And he just, perfect professional, sort of smiled and said, well, I'd love to be in it if they asked me. So we don't know if he's in it or not, but and I know there's stuff going on with the Cushing estate at the moment and usage of rights and stuff. That's a totally separate legal thing. We know K2SO's come back.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things to touch on that feel way more kinetic and action-packed. There's a lot of action in Andor Season 1, but you wouldn't call Andor action-packed. You're bringing in X-Wings and Rebels and Imperials. This could be action-orientated.
It could be a tonal change, but I don't think it will be. I still think we're going to have that tension. The thing is, we will be, as viewers, a lot more akin to what we're expected now. That doesn't mean to think that we're not going to have any surprises, but I was very happy and pleasantly surprised that we didn't get K2SO at all, really, barring a couple of security droids, because there is a world in which he gets introduced by the second or third episode, and the whole first season is him getting this relationship with K2. So how long into the series we get that, I don't know, because you do want to see more of that relationship, because it is a very interestingly fun relationship.
It is, and you just saying that makes me think. When Phantom Menace came out, and loads of people were like, "Why are we seeing this film with a little kid? Why can't we just go straight into the Clone Wars?" And because you'd had 16 years of very little, hardly any live action at all, with very few exceptions of clips in the special editions, you can look back and kind of understand the impatience. But now you've just picked up on probably the primary relationship in Rogue One, Cassian and K2. They're the Han and Chewie of that film. And so people want to know how they got to that point. And we've learned little bits over the years. There was the Cassian and K2 comic, and there's little bits that have come out. But I'm surprised that there haven't been more people making that point, sort of saying, why are we watching this version of Cassian? I want him with K2. I want him doing cool stuff. You didn't hear that. So maybe there's more of a pattern. There's more Star Wars to chew over. So you don't need to be impatient. There's other stuff to watch. There wasn't back in 99. But I'm surprised that that's not been vocalized more. And I'm pleased because I love what we got.
No, me too. I think it's going to be really fun if we do get to see Mads and really learn more about that character, because just the nature of the film, you don't really need to get to know Galen Erso too well. What you learn about him is through Jin's eyes. So It would be interesting to see it more from his eyes and see the conflict, the conflict of family versus duty versus, like a lot of scientists, and you kind of have this with Oppenheimer, and really in some respects you could equate the Death Star to those scientists working on the Oppenheimer project, but actually it's just a challenge because it's a scientific question. Can we do this? That's all it is. And then obviously it's down to the power that be to decide how to wield that when that puzzle gets cracked. So it'll be interesting to see again how far through the timeline we see. Is Galen maybe getting misled? Is he misunderstood by the reasons why he's there? And then at what point does he kind of go, actually, hang on a sec, this ain't right. I want to stop this. I need to stop this, but I can only do it in the clever way that I know how, and nothing too overt.
That's a great point, That's a really good point, because there's so many threads in Andor Season 1 that they need to pick up in Season 2. But there's also callbacks going back up the timeline from Rogue One, and that one you've just mentioned is one of the key ones.
I think
so. And you said about wondering about surprises, and I think, well, you see in Season 1, you see Mon Mothma in the Senate, in that beautiful room from Phantom Menace that we saw throughout the prequels. And it felt very different. It's geographically the same, but it felt different. And I just wonder whether or not we will get to see the Emperor in Season 2. It kind of feels like we might. There's a potential. And you mentioned, obviously, Jin and Lyra, and specifically Galen. You see the flashbacks.
Yeah.
You've seen flashbacks to it. So maybe that's something we'll see. Maybe we will see Jin Erso in the background. Or will we see her more likely with Saw in flashbacks? They'll have gone their separate ways by this point. So there's loads of options of things that you could see. I have the confidence in Andor that they won't come along with a great big comedy mallet and smack you over the head with it. It'll be just subtle enough that you'll sort of watch it and then watch, hang on, was that? You know what I mean? That's kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Or just very organic, because you've got all those great military characters that we were introduced to in Rogue One, a lot of which went out of it. Some didn't. General Draven's still around, but Merrick dies in Rogue One, but he'll be around for Andor. So there's characters that you could go back and meet again. Ian McElhenney, he could be Dodonna again and see more of him. So there's lots of characters that you could see in those roles. And of course, Jimmy Smits as Bail Organa. So there's lots of potential to really up the star, within the galaxy, up the star factor as we sort of ride in. I don't know what you think, but it felt clear to me that Cassian was for what he did, for a guy who's working in the shadows, and you see it plenty in Season 1 of Andor. He's got no compunction about just putting people out. He's the James Bond, if you like. He's the lethal enforcer. He's probably very well respected for what he does, because it's a grey area. Luthen says it. We have to employ the tactics of our enemy to get the ends that we want it, and we're selling our souls for freedom. I'm fighting for a sunrise I'll never see and all that sort of stuff. To see that more in action kind of feels like it's all going to come to roost in Season 2.
This is Charles Soule. You're listening to Fantha Tracks.
So for the second time today, we're heading back to Farnborough for FanX Live and my chat with Jack Parker. Jack, you will know, operated Pip in The Acolyte. He's also operating Herbie in the Fantastic Four movie, which you'll hear more about in a moment as I sit down and chat with Jack Parker at FanX Live in Farnborough. So we're here at FanX in Farnborough. It's Sunday afternoon. I'm sitting here with Jack. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. It's been a nice day. How are you enjoying the show?
Yeah, it's great. It's really great to chat with loads of Star Wars fans.
Your experiences working on The Acolyte came out and did good business on Disney Plus. It's had a mixed history, I guess is probably the best way of putting it. But nevertheless, your experience leading with that character Pip, which was such a focal character in the whole storyline. How has it been now seeing the positive reactions to the work that you did on that show?
it's lovely to hear people enjoying the show and the stuff we did. And my takeaway from it, obviously there's been a lot of kind of political stuff around it, but my takeaway from it is I'm really proud of what we did as a team. I think the creatures and the droids really shone through, and there were so many great new designs, all sorts of crazy things. And I think they looked amazing. And I really enjoyed seeing all of this team's hard work on screen and looking so fantastic.
I think when we spoke before on Fantha Tracks, and for Insider as well, one of the things that we picked up on and pointed out was I'm holding a Zoom recorder, and it's not much smaller than Pip, really. There's not that much difference. And so to have out in the Star Wars world a droid that is pocket-sized and portable, but so durable and useful, is fascinating. It's a character or a machine that we might be seeing way down the Star Wars timeline. In addition, with one of my favourite things in the show was the headrest droids on the starship. I mean, that was such a cool concept. So being part of that and being involved in all these new additions to the broader story must have been fascinating as well.
Oh yeah, totally. And I really, really hope Pip droids get another outing at some point, because they're fun and, like you say, they're durable and they're useful. And I feel like everyone in the galaxy needs to have one of these Pip droids. They get you out of a lot of scrapes.
It totally feels when they did ET and they replaced the guns with flashlights and and the keys hanging off the pocket. And it just feels like they need to go back to all the Star Wars projects and just hook a little Pip on everyone's belt, so they've all got it.
Yeah, in the background of those iconic scenes, there's just little Pips hanging around. I like the idea of that. Well, I'm up for it if Disney are.
Why not? What else have you been up to?
Project Hail Mary as well, which is super cool for me, and I was desperate to get in on that one because it's one of my all-time favourite books.
Right.
I don't know if you've read it.
No, I think isn't he the fellow that wrote The Martian?
Yeah, Andy Weir, and I love his work. But Project Hail Mary is easily my favourite one.
Right. Okay.
It's brilliant, and everyone should read it. It's fantastic.
Right. Okay.
So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Can't give you any spoilers if you've not read the book, but can't wait to see that in the cinema. And I've not seen Beetlejuice yet. Right. But I did some work on that. Looking forward to seeing that at some point.
What was your involvement in that?
I did some of the
colleagues here were involved as well. So
yeah. So I did some of the animatronics on the shrinker heads.
Yeah.
So we had lots of shrinkers. So I did played three of those doing their faces. Yeah. I did a little bit on the baby and. Santa Claus in the waiting room as well, who's sort of got stuck down the chimney and's been desiccated by the fire. I mean that was a really exciting project to be part of because that whole world of Beetlejuice is just visually so stunning. I don't think I've ever seen better sets than those. They were so varied, so beautiful, and also all the characters that were created for it. There were some scenes where you'd have like 200 supporting artists, and every single one would be costumed in this amazing costumes for the way they died, and it was just people with baseball bats stuck in their eye sockets, and people with shark bites out of them. It was so creative and just such a fun environment to be around.
And Tim Burton is such a specific. It's got it's him, and there's no mistaking that it's him. He's such a specific director and designer. What's it like working with somebody who's got such a singular vision? He knows what he wants from you, so you therefore know what to give back to him.
Yeah, I mean, because I do a little bit of filmmaking myself, and part of the joy of this work that I do is I get to observe like some of the greatest filmmakers in the industry. So that's always a really fascinating part of the process for me, and I was really interested to see how Tim Burton worked because his movies are fantastic and, like you say, so unique. And he is a very specific guy, like he had a really specific vision. His energy on set, he just went and went and went. But also, as soon as he gets very excited about what we were showing him. So we're showing him all these cool creatures and various bits and bobs, and you could tell when it was working because he got super animated about it, super excited. But he knows what he wants, a couple of takes, 2-3 takes, and we're moving on as soon as he sees it. Michael Keaton, obviously I've had the privilege of kind of being on set with a lot of the world's greatest actors, but genuinely his performance on set was mind-blowing. The pace and the speed of that he was delivering the thoughts and everything. As an actor myself, it was a real masterclass. It was hats off to him. Best thing I've ever seen.
And it must be fantastic to have a project come out like that that's gone down so well with the audience and been so well received by the people that love the original, because it's so in step with that original film.
Yeah. And interestingly, lots of my mates aren't that interested in the stuff I make, that stuff I work on. But Beetlejuice everyone has been like, oh my God, I can't wait to see it. I've had texts coming, or the last month or so. It really captures people's imagination, and the original is fantastic, so I can see why.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Always appreciate it.
Yeah, you too. Good to speak again.
On the 1st of November, music by John Williams landed on Disney+. I had the good fortune to watch it a few days ago, and you have just finished watching it. So without any further ado, what did you make of it?
I thought it was a lovely little documentary. How do you encapsulate the man's career into anything more than a 10-hour docuseries? There is so many films that we didn't touch on. And obviously, because it's, the access was Lucasfilm primarily with Steven Spielberg. Because when you think about it, the relationship that he has with Spielberg is, for us anyway, it's probably secondary to the one that we think about straight away, which is his relationship with George. But just had a lot of heart. Right near the end, just him just going out and playing golf. It wasn't just a very straight, dry documentary. But they touched on a lot of areas which I kind of almost wish I would go a little bit further in, but they kept the pacing up so it didn't linger too long and everything. So I thought it was a really beautiful documentary.
Our good buddy Jamie Benning from the Filmimentaries podcast has had Lawrence Bouzereau on the show this past week. But one thing I really appreciated about the documentary was, like you said, twofold. One, it made me hanker for more, and I totally agree with you. They could have made this a 10-part documentary if they wanted to. But also when Bouzereau was sort of speaking about it, saying how he'd made it clear that everything that you learnt about John Williams was in relation to the music, that the music was the story, not the man. And so when you learnt a little bit about, for example, his wife passing away in 74, that there was a direct sort of correlation to that was the start of his... I mean, he's already won an Oscar. Let's not pretend he'd not already been wildly successful. But that was when Jaws came not long after that, and all the other projects and that insane run from like Jaws right through to, sort of Temple of Doom era. And then beyond that, and the Potters and the Jurassics and stuff. And I thought the opening montage was, well, I had a little teary-eyed, to be perfectly honest. It was brilliant.
I'm glad it wasn't just me then, because I was like, and actually one of the things, and obviously it's a very, very well done in the audio mix, is that like they cut from classic blue on black background of a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. When they play that opening couple of bars of the Star Wars theme, it's fully in 5-1. Whereas like I think up until that there was 5-1, but like the rear speakers weren't really doing much. It's like they went, right, this is a point where we need to ramp it up, and you're just like, holy hell, that's really cool. I know actually some films do it, like on the Blu-ray, so they will actually do a music only version, so you can just have the music of some films without the dialogue and stuff. But it's very rare to hear the films without the music and the dialogue and the sound effects, because it's actually, as I said, it gives it so much more character. And like when you talk about Jaws, you talk about the whole idea that the music can actually give the impression that the Jaws character, as it were, is on screen for longer, so Jaws itself didn't work, but what makes it menacing is Johnny Williams' score. That's what it comes down to. And then, you start to see the correlation between that and then Vader's theme in A New Hope as well. And, that's kind of very dark and minor kind of theme. And all these kind of little things just kind of start to fall into place a little bit more.
And you made a good observation about how we as Star Wars fans think of George and John as a big relationship, which of course it is. Yeah. But even when you hear Lucas talking about the relationship, it's very much obvious and clear that Spielberg set that up. He was the one that said, you need to know John Williams, because there's Spielberg, who is a movie score nerd and knows all this stuff and can reference stuff. And George has things that he can reference to, but maybe not to the same degree quite that Spielberg did. I think you look at their skills and you think of them both as directors, both as producers, both as writers, but their hearts are in slightly different places. George always preferred to get it down and make it work in the edit. That's not Spielberg's strength, so they are similar but different, and it's probably why they work together so well. I think it's Spielberg says, my films don't work without the music of John Williams. And it's just like you just said about how you can watch some films without the music. If you watch Star Wars with just the audio and the sound effects, it doesn't work. And they did give an example. Cheap. They showed a scene from Jaws with the music and then without the music. And it's like...
two different things.
Work.
They talked about how, like, to this day, he's still like a paper and pencil composer. He writes everything manually himself by hand. And he said, everybody now has a keyboard. They can write it as they're playing it. And you can then do multiple orchestrations very quickly and very easily. He is like this snapshot of time, the way films were made for a long period of time, which now it's evolution, and they talk about that. They talk about how, like, you think about people like Hans Zimmer and Thomas Newman about, some of their scores are more soundscapes. It's more abstract and it's drones and it's vibe rather than specific motifs. You take John Williams and just about every single film that he's put his name to and composed music for is something that is recognizable, is iconic, and also very emotive. As what's his face from Coldplay says, some of these themes are now in our DNA. That was the other thing. It was quite an interesting mix of personalities. Who was actually...
it was Chris Martin coming up. I wasn't expecting that, but it was fascinating to hear from, wasn't he?
And also Seth MacFarlane from Family Guy and that. But you kind of think, well, actually, that makes perfect sense. You look at Family Guy, and yes, I know they're very satirical, they take Mickey out of many films and stuff, but he has got such an innate knowledge and appreciation for the music of films and musicals and that. He makes a perfect contributor for a documentary like this. That is probably all we have time for this week. No listeners' question, upsettingly. Please send them in. And if you don't know how to do it, Mr. Newbold can tell you where you need to send it.
I definitely can, and here's how you can do it.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fantha Tracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show, Good Morning Tatooine, goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fantha Tracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
And that's me done for this episode.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, it's been lovely to chat with you again. I think I will be seeing your ugly mug in person this coming weekend at London Comic Con for the winter edition.
I'm hosting 8 panels, 4 on Saturday, 4 on Sunday. And here's the kicker, only 4 of them are about Star Wars. So I've got some research to do because I know very little about Doctor Who and I know very little about Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Friday the 13th.
If you want to listen to more fantastic panels, come along to London Comic Con. And if you don't, well then, more for you. However, we'll probably actually end up doing a walk around type live thing because it's a tradition now. So we'll do that. Stay safe, take care, buy lots of Star Wars, have a fantastic Star Wars week, whatever that means to you. And as always, may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.